Springfield's Talk 1041. Yep. Welcome, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. It is Wednesday. And that's how the show is starting this morning. That's a great start off to the show. You like that? Just straight up, here's what the show is.
And here's what day it is.
And here's what day it is. So
baby.
Yes, indeed we are on the right track. Folks, if you are not or have not been watching at least some of the excerpts of Trump over in Saudi Arabia, you're missing out. I know a lot of times these things are boring. You got the leader of the free world going over to this country, going over to that country, especially Biden. Now, we watched Biden with interest to see if he would trip, if he would fall, if he would poop his pants, try to figure out which world leader was assigned to be his caretaker for the day, that sort of thing. But other than that, it's generally, it's just the same stuff, right? They go and they talk about the relations and the future and working together, and it's just the same. It really is a lot of virtue signaling. It's a lot of look how important we are. All of the cameras here, the world's eyes are upon us. You watch Trump, and if you're paying attention, you realize he's actually getting things done, changing like the landscape of history. And I'm not overstating what the potential outcomes are if he gets his way. This is, for me, anyhow, anyone that you follow at some point can get redundant, even if it's winning. Trump made the comment, if I get reelected, people are going to get tired of winning. And I remember Greg Gutfeld after a few weeks saying, I thought that was just rhetoric, but it's actually true. At this point, it's like, how many more, executive orders? There are all these good things. And I'm like, yeah, we get it already. But Trump has this ability there are no lines. And so he has these audacious and unrealistic visions of the way things could be, the way things can be. And when you get that and you listen to what he's talking about and the things that he's saying, and you realize that for him, it's not just rhetoric. He's not like everyone else. And then you think, my gosh, this is a new concept. This is a new idea. I'm telling you now, Donald Trump sees a peaceful Middle East. And not a peaceful Middle East because everyone is just sitting quietly waiting for the shoe to drop and then the explosion is going to occur, or, simply because Hamas hasn't had funding and there's regrouping going on, the back and forth with these lulls. But the baseline being peace, you can tell, not only because of just his presentation of it, but the things that he's talking about in terms of meaningful things occurring and announcing things that you're like, oh. And at first you're like, well, we can't do that. For example, later in the show, we'll get into some more of the details of this. But he talked about lifting sanctions on Syria. Now, what's the instinct when you hear that? Well, now, wait a minute. That's a really bad place. Yeah, Assad was horrible, but the replacement is horrible. Why on earth would you lift sanctions? And Trump's vision is, listen, there's a new guy in charge. He hasn't had the opportunity yet to, he has not been given by the United States an opportunity to be a good player in the sandbox. And so we're going to give it to him. That's the right thing to do. Now, if he doesn't abide by it, if he decides he doesn't want to play nice and benefit like all the other countries in the Middle East that are beginning to benefit through the Abraham Accords and these others that see the vision and say they want on board, then we'll just have to go back to sanctions and we'll do what we are doing to Iran and putting the screws to them. And Trump all but says that. Like, hey, listen, new leadership, we at least give them a chance. And with Trump, that holds weight because Trump isn't like past leaders that say we'll give you a chance. Then if the chance is violated, we'll give you another one. Then if that's violated, you get another one. And the bad guy realizes, oh, we're the ones who are actually in control here. We're controlling the United States, not the other way around. But because of Trump's behavior, all of these countries and the leaders of these countries recognize that if Trump says, you do this and this is what happens, then that's what's going to happen. They know that he is in charge. And with that comes a tremendous amount of influence. You look at the reception of Joe Biden when he went to Saudi Arabia. Now, mind you, when he was running against Donald Trump, he ripped on Donald Trump for treating Saudi Arabia as if they were on equal footing and visiting with the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. And if he's president, he'll never do that. He immediately went over there, fist bumped the guy, show how cool he was, how in the loop he was with the Saudi Arabians. And the presentation, I mean, it was... The reception was non-existent. The press coverage, of course, was extremely controlled and limited. And Biden at one point comes out, and there's the presidential podium set up, and there's a drab background curtains behind, like a grayish blue. And he comes out, and well, I met for 30 minutes with the prime minister, or with the finance minister, and overall we had about 2 hours of meetings, and I told him, that together we are the future, and the thing, and like that was it in its entirety. Trump arrives. They have these white Arabian horses that are leading a procession for Trump. And do you know what? Of course, they have Saudi Arabian flags, but they are also waving American flags. This massive, it's this thing you got to see. Maybe we can see if we can get some clips up. This facility they're in, it's filled with, some world leaders. It's filled with titans of industry. This is Saudi Arabia. This is the Middle East. They, not only as an introduction to Donald Trump, play God Bless the USA, they make sure it plays through until the very end, and they are all standing as a sign of respect during the entire song. You know what else they played? I think at one point, YMCA.
Of course. I don't know, they must have, well, I don't know what went into this. They had a mobile McDonald's that is on site everywhere in case Trump wants a McDonald's, wants that Diet Coke, wants that Big Mac. And I know, listen, people who hate Trump, you're not going to get it. There's no hope for you in terms of seeing the phenomenal potential of completely altering not just our relationship with the Middle East, but really creating a baseline culture of people who see the benefits of peace as opposed to just trying to slaughter one another. But for people who really do look and hope for good and positive change and really genuinely would like to see things happen like that we all, for the most part believe will never, ever happen. They'll never stop fighting. They'll never stop killing each other. They'll never stop this and that. And then when you see, oh my gosh, it is possible. It is such a profoundly amazing thing to observe. And while you never know, of course, there are going to be interested parties that do not want this peace in the Middle East overall, this culture of peace. And I'll call it a culture of peace because it's beyond just, The Abraham Accords help bring that about and in certain ways weave within the culture of peace that's being created by the Trump administration, or the previous Trump administration, and they're continuing on with it now. But there will be interested, organizations that do not want that, and so they will try to make sure it doesn't happen. They will try to mean girl it and get the conflict going back up. Get this side of it as soon as they see. Because I tell you this, the idea that Saudi Arabia, which Trump openly in front of them all talked about, Saudi Arabia recognizing Israel, signing on to these Abraham Accords. You know how massive that would be? And to see that and Trump just commanding that audience, and it is such a phenomenal time in history. Oh, not to mention economic numbers coming out yesterday. Those were fantastic. I'm telling you, it is this guy in the last 4 or 5 days, he has done more than in terms of positive, massive steps forward for the country and in some ways the world than I think any president can list in any of their 1 or 2 terms. And I'm just talking about results, actual results. Weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 87. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 68. For your Thursday, partly sunny with a high near 88. And looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 87.
All right, let's talk about some great economic news, which is great because it's great, right? I mean, quality of life overall, everything is looking up economically, but it is particularly enjoyable given that 3 weeks ago we were told that the Great Depression was around the corner because of Trump tinkering with tariffs. Trump, deciding to hit the reset button and to say, all right, everyone, this is the new standard. If you want that to change, we're more than willing to sit down and negotiate. Just let us know. And, of course, so far we've had movement with a number of countries that most people don't necessarily recognize as having a tremendous amount of impact on our economy, but nonetheless, the UK and China, the big one, coming to the table and saying, okay, we're willing to deal here. And so in order to allow time for that to occur, there's been that 90-day pause. And, just as usual. And by the way, this just really grates on me. I've heard it described as, well, both sides blinking. This is not... Now, China, yes, but we're not blinking. This is the whole point. This is like if you are, you're I'm trying to think of some sort of, I'm looking to sell my car to someone, and they're like, oh, I'll give you this much. And I'm like, no. I got a car for $10,000. They're like, well, I'll give you $8,000. I was like, no, I don't think so. But if you want to come back, and because I just not going to work with you at that level. But if you want to come back, I'm willing to work with you, but not at $8,000. And then that person comes back and says, okay, you said that if I wanted to work out a deal, I could come back to you. I'm doing that. And I say, okay, I'm not blinking. I am working within the framework I set up. And I've heard a number of particularly Trump critics when it comes to the tariffs, like, see, look, this proves he didn't know what he's doing because now he's having to renegotiate. That was the entire point. And the bonus was, or is, that he set it up to where if the country decided, no, we're not going to, we still win because of tariff revenue coming into the Treasury. But Democrats, of course, every time Trump succeeds or something goes the way that, Trump predicts or expects, they have to pretend like that's not what happened. Much like with the economy. I saw an article, by the way, in which, because, egg prices have gone down tremendously. This was something else. Democrats, even while egg prices were going down, they were spreading this disinformation campaign that they were going up. And it was, again, with the consumer who buys eggs, they're like, obviously, they see that the price of eggs going down tremendously. And there was an entire article explaining how, well, they're not, you may think they're going down, but that's not really what's happening. Like, again, telling you, don't believe your own lying eyes. All right, so U.S. inflation is cooler than expected. Once again, the experts the media go to, were predicting that it would be worse than it is. Prices up 2.3%, smallest annual increase. So it's the smallest inflation since February of 2021, so over 4 years. Now that seems like the opposite of what we were told was good. Remember that this was all going to be inflation. It's going to cause massive inflation. This massive inflation was going to be created all over the country, and oh my gosh, it was like raising taxes, inflation, taxes, and lo and behold, inflation's the lowest it's been in 4 years, over 4 years. U.S. inflation edging up less than expected in April, defying predictions that tariffs would push prices up at a faster rate.
The Consumer Price Index rose 0.2% compared with the previous month, the Department of Labor said. Economists had forecasted 0.3% increase following a 0.1% decline in March. Compared with a year ago, consumer prices are up 2.3%. That is the lowest inflation reading since February of 2021. Core prices, a measure that excludes food and energy prices, only rose 0.2%. Remember when inflation was like 8, 9% under Biden? 0.2%. Economists had forecasted the core prices rising 0.3%, up from 0.1% decline reported in March. This is the third consecutive month in which analysts had overestimated month-to-month inflation, because here we go again. During the Obama years, economists always overestimated how wonderful things were going to be and had to correct things, every prediction, to show that the reality that they weren't as good as predicted. Trump's first term, it was the opposite. Biden gets elected. We go right back to these experts telling, oh, things are better than you think. Oh, don't worry, this inflation, it doesn't exist. Well, maybe it does, but it's transitory. Maybe it's not transitory, but it only affects rich people. And now, by the way, it's corporate greed. Yes, the grocery stores are all conspiring in order to screw you over. You hear this from the experts. Now we're right back to the days of the experts underestimating the outcomes of Trump's policies. The April CPI report, the first since Trump announced tariff hikes on April 2nd, Liberation Day. Some higher tariffs on China, however, have been in effect since February. And still, inflation did not go up. Went down. Many economists had been claiming that tariffs would push consumer prices in April, but the report indicates that that did not happen. I don't know about you, but I have genuinely gotten to the point when the media presents someone as an expert, that is a detriment in my interpretation of the information that they're given. Now, once upon a time, experts are like, oh, they know what they're talking about. For a lot of us, particularly during the COVID period, they lost their credibility. And so it was like, whatever, an expert, you're no different than anyone else. But for some of us, I know I speak for myself, it works against them. Because what happens is when they put somebody up that's an expert, that means you're just supposed to believe them because we told you they're an expert. It doesn't matter that they've been wrong all these other times, see. The experts that the media uses in terms of economists since the Obama years, they are consistently wrong. Consistently during Obama, they were wrong, overestimating the positives. Then Trump gets elected. Consistently through the entire term, they were wrong. During the Biden years, particularly when it came to inflation, all of the economic experts, they were wrong through the entire 4 years. Yet it's the exact same people they tout out. People that have consistently proven to be wrong over and over and over and over again. It's because of that consistency that I genuinely mean this. When there is one of these economists on, with a few exceptions, but these economists on the whole with the mainstream media, whatever they say, my instinct is that their track record shows that the opposite is going to be the case. That's their track record. That's not my bias. That is me analyzing the consistency of them predicting the opposite of what is actually going to occur. New car prices. Cars, it's going to cost you $100,000 more to get a car. You're going to have to sell 3 of your children to get a car. New car prices expected to be hit by the tariffs flat for the month. Used car prices fell by 0.5%. Compared with a year ago, new car prices up only 0.3%, and used car prices only up 1.5% from a year ago.
Apparel prices fell 0.2%, down 0.7% a year ago, from a year ago. You see all this? Now, I want just, straight talk here. I know a lot of you that are absolutely reasonable people that look for factual information. When all of that first 24 hours in the stock market, oh my God, the doom and gloom and these tariffs, and it's just bombarded, and you started to get a little worried. You're like, oh my. I mean, this time seems a little bit different. I trust Trump and all, but ... Now, it's understandable and reasonable to have had some concerns about what does this mean short term, how's this going to play out. That's a perfectly reasonable thing because we've not had a president that was willing to take the steps that he took, so we didn't really have anything to compare it to other than his history of knowing what he's doing. But just remember that part of the reason you felt that way was because the media had all these experts on, including some Republicans, talking about how this was a tax increase, that this was going to cause massive inflation, this was going to cause the stock market to crash. The stock market is up over what it was before any of this even began, and you have inflation lower than it's been in over 4 years, and all of these dire predictions. In fact, not just inflation, but in some core areas, prices actually have fallen. See, these are the moments that we can put a stamp on. And while we're very accustomed to the media being dishonest and spreading disinformation, there are moments in which it does, it can be more effective because of the unknown nature of things and all these so-called experts. But this is a great one to remember that, I remember that one time when they told me I had to freak out and that it was inevitable these horrible things were going to happen, and they were all wrong. Streaming, KSGF.com. Got weather coming up in just a moment. And then an editorial. I'm going to get some tough news here.
Coming up, an editorial in the New York Times by Josh Hawley. Now, the fact that he goes to the New York Times, I think, should tell us all something right there. Josh Hawley, while he does an excellent job at interrogating people and does a great service in that capacity, he is big government. When it comes to government policy, he's in line with Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders. When it comes to price controls and government dictating business behavior and so forth. And when it comes to socialized medicine, he is demonstrating that he is no different than the Ocasio-Cortezes and the Bernie Sanders. And unfortunately, I think there's a very, very good chance that he's essentially working to torpedo any sort of meaningful fiscal responsibility and keep all of the waste and fraud and all of the freeloaders protected from losing Medicaid. And he's arguing for that in his editorial. So we'll talk about that coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 87. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 68. For your Thursday, partly sunny with a high near 88. And looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 87.
Josh Hawley has written a guest essay for the New York Times that could have easily been written by Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders. There's a reason there's a reason that this is in the New York Times. This is to give ammunition and an assist and talking points to Democrats. The New York Times is the paper for Democrats. This is where they go in order to get their information, set the tone for the day. And I'm telling you the truth here. We have to be realistic about what we got in life. Josh Hawley is not a conservative. He is just not conservative. Now, he may be pro-life, but virtually everything else, he has demonstrated that he doesn't really have any true convictions. He takes a stance in whatever he thinks is going to make him most popular. What do we conservatives are? No price controls, right? Laissez-faire, keep government out of business, less regulations. But what is it that people don't like?
They don't like high credit card interest rates. So what does he do? Well, the smaller government, less regulation, laissez-faire conservative, all of a sudden wants price controls along with Ocasio-Cortez on credit cards. Well, that's not somebody with conviction. That's somebody that is simply saying, okay, what's popular now? Yes, I'm going to do that. When it comes to socialized medicine, and getting more and more people reliant on government. Well, most people would say, yeah, that's clearly not a conservative value. Josh Hawley's entire piece in the New York Times is for keeping the massive expansion of Medicaid to cover able-bodied people who are able to work but just say, I don't want to. That occurred under Obama, that occurred under Biden. And he's arguing to keep it. And do you know why? What does he cite? Well, the polls. The polls show that, a majority of people like Medicaid, have a favorable view of it. So, again, that's not a conviction. You're like, okay, how do people feel? This is going to be my stance on it. I believe part of the reason that Josh Hawley is the Republican that is trying to torpedo any real meaningful efforts in terms of our deficits and trying to make sure the expansion of government and socialized medicine occurs is because they recognize Josh Hawley he's going to be U.S. Senator in Missouri as long as he wants to. And I think I'm realistic about that. It doesn't matter how far to the left he is, how big government he is, how much he pushes legislation for price controls. He is a Republican, and he'll never lose a primary challenge. And as long as Democrats keep running nut jobs against him, and we are a state that votes as heavily Republican as we do, he's safe. So he can come out writing guest essays for the New York Times Democrat readers supporting the ideas of Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie, and he knows the people in Missouri are not going to vote him out. Now, this piece of his is portraying the fiscally conservative Republicans that, at the very least, say we should not be giving even greater benefits to, 25-year-old guys who simply don't want to work. He's portraying those as speaking for C Street, claiming that these are the Republicans that are wanting to get back to the, quote, old-time religion, corporate giveaways, preferences for capital, and deep cuts to social insurance. This wing of talking about conservatives, of the party wants Republicans to build our big, beautiful bill around slashing health insurance for the working poor, but that argument is both morally wrong and political suicide. Now, again, understand, no one is talking about slashing Medicaid for people who need it. There are some fiscally conservative Republicans who are saying, hey, you remember how once upon a time all Republicans were saying we need to repeal those parts of Obamacare and this expansion of Medicaid to cover guys who can work, people that can work but don't want to? Yeah, let's do that. That's what they're talking about. So this is where, I know for a lot of people it's uncomfortable, but I argue that Josh Hawley is being dishonest. This is shifting from a political ideology that believes in socialized medicine and arguing for expanded government to where he is lying about what it is that other Republicans who are fiscally responsible are trying to do. He writes in the New York Times, let's begin with the facts of the matter. Medicaid is a federal program that provides health care to low-income Americans in partnership with state government. Today it serves over 70 million Americans, including well over 1 million residents of Missouri. Now, like And this is the difference in perspective between somebody who is on the left versus someone on the right. Someone on the right sees that as a problem. Like, we're doing something very wrong if we are continuing to have to, quote, help more and more people. People on the left see this as positive. Look how many people. Look how great we have all of these people that are reliant on government, reliant on the taxpayers for this benefit. We can't change that. He claims, and this is the typical Democrat talking point, all of this we'll get the entire thing posted, but I'm taking excerpts. If Congress cuts funding for Medicaid benefits, Missouri workers and their children will lose their health care. Hospitals will close. It's that simple. And that pattern will be replicated in states across the country. It's almost like an ad lib for a lefty. One of my constituents, a married mother of 5, contacted me to explain why Medicaid is vital to her 8-year-old daughter who depends on a feeding tube to survive. It's just like, let's find... This is what's dishonest. When you have Republicans talking about actually trying to shore up Medicaid for people who really need it by getting off the people who don't. But Josh Hawley describes what they're trying to do in the context of an 8-year-old on a feeding tube, who conservative Republicans want to rip that tube right out of him and throw him over a bridge and laugh the whole time. It's no different than the Mitt Romney pushing your grandmother in a wheelchair off a bridge, or Paul Ryan, whichever one that the Democrats, that political cartoon that they ran. This is the same thing. He goes on to argue Republicans need to open their eyes. Our voters support social insurance programs. More than that, our voters depend on these programs. Listen to this. This is what we're supposed to believe is the argument from a conservative? They need government. We got to give them more government. Don't you understand? None of this is about how to fix the system. None of this is about how it is that we can get back to a time in which medicine was more affordable and more efficient. It's about how do we keep as many people on the government dole as possible. He argues that for the better part of 50 years, working wages have been flat in real terms. Working people cannot afford to marry when they want to, have the number of children they want to, or raise the number of children they want to. These days, they can barely afford to put a roof over their kid's head, to say nothing of health care. And so the answer is more government? Explain to me how this is not left-wing socialism. Arguing that because our economy has, and quality of life, economically speaking, has slowly diminished over time, that means we need more and bigger government. We need government to be more intrusive in people's lives. We need more people to be reliant on government. Now, listen, again, I'm not under any delusion here that somehow, this is the thing about the conversation. For many of you, they're like, but I like Josh Hawley. That's fine. He's going to be in there forever. He'll be in there as long as he wants to be. Nobody has to worry about that. He's not going to be primaried out. He will, one day, I'm telling you, in this country, people across the country are going to see him as a Susan Collins, a Murkowski, and a Mitt Romney. It's just for the fact that he does do, and most of the attention he gets is when he's really ripping people and grilling them, and he does a fantastic job of that. And oftentimes, people who really, really need it, and he exposes a lot of people for who they really, truly are, and that is a tremendous benefit. The trade-off is we have somebody that is blocking real, meaningful fiscal responsibility in this country and arguing off the same page as left-wing Democrats. And that's how it is we end up in the mess that we're in. That's just fact. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. I want to read to you, this is from April 25th of this year. Able-bodied unemployed adults have overrun the Medicaid program. This is what some Republicans are trying to fix, and what Josh Hawley has in this guest essay in the New York Times opposed. And and these are just the sheer numbers, and this problem really, really accelerated because of Obamacare. A plurality of Medicaid spending goes towards able-bodied adults, with 62% of them not even working, not seeking any education, training, and not even volunteering. After Obamacare, Medicaid costs have been driven by able-bodied adults, particularly unemployed ones. Not the 8-year-old on a feeding tube. Democrats via Obamacare expanded Medicaid eligibility to include absolutely any adult earning 138% above or of the federal poverty level and below, above and below. Suddenly, in the 40 states and D.C. who have adopted Medicaid expansion, of which Missouri is one of them, able-bodied adults of working age were eligible for a program designed to help the neediest among us. So they expanded it massively to cover people who didn't need it. Between 2013 and 2021, almost 20 million newly eligible able-bodied adults were added to Medicaid. During that same period, the number of children increased by 2.5 million, the number of elderly enrollees increased by 1.2 million, and the number of disabled declined by 400,000. So listen to those numbers. Children, 1.2 million. Or 2.5 million, elderly 1.2 million, able-bodied people 20 million. According to the Foundation for Government Accountability, 69% of the increased federal Medicaid costs since 2000 are attributed to Obamacare enrollment increases. A plurality of Medicaid spending has now been diverted away from those who need it to able-bodied adults. In 2000, there were 6.9 able-bodied adults on Medicaid. Today, 34 million. To make matters worse, most of them aren't even bothering to work. These are able-bodied people. These aren't, well, maybe they're not working because they can't. These are specifically people who can work. Over a 10-year budget window, implementing work requirements on able-bodied adults under 60 without young children could save taxpayers $260 billion. So understand, this is where fiscal conservatives are looking at some of the savings. They are talking about not even, because what is recognized here is you're not even saying kick these people off, but at least have a work requirement if they are able to work. And the recognition that some of them will be like, no, I don't want to work. I refuse to work. And so then they will no longer get Medicaid. Well, when Josh Hawley and Democrats are talking about they're going to be kicking people off Medicaid, those are the people that they're talking about. Now, they want you to believe it's an 8-year-old on a feeding tube, but that's not true. I just believe in dealing with reality. And any sort of motivations aside, the fact of the matter is there is absolutely no way. We keep hearing about this is our one chance. This is it. If under this, in this environment with Trump at this peak right now, we are not able to get these meaningful changes and again, we're not talking about kicking people off Medicaid who need it. We're talking about people who didn't need it that were added under Obamacare. And if people like Josh Hawley do everything they can to block that from happening, that they are the ones who are going to be responsible. They are the ones that remember this is down the road and they're talking about fiscal irresponsibility. They are the roadblock right now. Springfield's Talk 104.1. Hello, welcome to the show, my friends. My name is Nick Reed. Turning that yard into an outdoor living space so you can entertain, be the belle of the ball, or maybe just have your own little place for serenity. Maybe you got a family and you love your family. Oh, you love your family, but they still drive you just a little bit nuts. And you got tired. You're tired of the bathroom being your only escape. You go in there, they still come in and they still, knock on the door and they bother you, and it just seems wrong that you're an adult in the house, yet your only place to escape is where there's a toilet. You have to go in there. How about create an outdoor oasis, your own? Well, Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor can do that for you. Now, again, they can, even beyond your imagination. I know when I had them come to do a design for me, I said, I don't even know. I can't in my mind envision what it is. Here's what I want to do. I want to be able to do these things. And so they sketch a few things up, and then we talk about it. I'm like, you know what? Yes, that is what I'm looking for. One of the other great things about them is they can customize it so that it is expandable over time. So maybe you, this upcoming fall, want to have a job done, and you're like, you know what? Financially, this is what we're looking to do. But we'd like to do more one day. They will customize the building so that when the first part is done, it doesn't look like it's halfway done. And then when it's added on, it doesn't look like an add-on, if that makes sense. This is what you can do with these folks. They're great. They're so good at what they do, and they are absolutely premier. So for any outdoor landscaping, which can involve everything from just a simple patio to soundscapes and waterscapes and lightscapes and everything that makes it premier. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, hunterhardscapes.com and KSGF.com, Nick's endorsements. You can find them there. Well, let me read a couple of the messages coming in. Talking about Josh Hawley going to the New York Times to argue against shoring up Medicaid by having, among other things, work requirements for able-bodied people. Medicaid massively expanded under Obamacare to cover, single men who are at home sitting in their mom's basement, can work but don't want to. And so one of the areas of savings that some Republicans note is that, hey, we can, at the very least, work requirements for some of these people. And there are establishment, big government Republicans that are opposed to this. Josh Hawley is one of them, and that's why he's gone to the New York Times. And I'm telling you, if you were to change the author to Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders, and you read it, you would think, well, this makes sense. I personally know 2 women milking the Medicaid system, and sadly, this is what has occurred, that the plurality of people on Medicaid now, because of Obamacare, can work but don't want to, choose not to. They're not the elderly, they're not the disabled, they're not the downtrodden, they're the people who are milking the system. I work in the medical industry, and I see Medicaid dollars that are crazy. It would be way cheaper just to buy these folks a car to go to get to a job or pay for their VOTEC job training. And this is the reality of this program. The irony is, if somebody really, truly wanted to make sure that the most vulnerable were secure under Medicaid, they would support shoring it up by putting work requirements in place for people who can work, or getting people off who are able-bodied and don't need to be on there. Years ago, I was at, this is anecdotal, I was at Captain D's. It's the Captain D's there on Battlefield and National. This was maybe 8-10 years ago or so. It was after Obamacare. And there was, I was standing inside waiting, and I got to talking to this gal. She looked like she was in her 50s or so. And we were talking, because there was somebody out on the corner with a sign, a panhandler. And she had mentioned that she saw them drive somewhere and park their car behind a building, and that it was she's like, it's a nicer car than mine. And she made a comment about how they're probably on Medicaid, and she said that she worked in an office that like the Medicaid office or whatever office it was that was responsible for dealing with people on Medicaid. And she said every year they find out ways to get new people on it. And she listed a couple of ways. She goes, oh, yeah, this past year, like different clubs and stuff that it would cover, or health this or that, these different things. She said that weren't in any way, shape, or form necessary. She said, but what I've learned is that it's like if they don't figure out how to get new people on it, then they feel like they haven't done their job. Not her, but government and politicians. This is the problem we have. And when you have, this is where a lot of people like me, in terms of the people that run the Republican Party, have become disenfranchised and feel like they're really, in terms of fiscal responsibility, there is no party that represents me. Because if you have Republican leadership, and I'd say Josh Hawley, he may not be in an official leadership position, but he's certainly, he's not chosen by the New York Times to write guest essays for no reason. He is influential. If there are Republicans like that are arguing to continue this bloated, out-of-control spending and continuing to get people who are 100% able to work and just choose not to continue to force you and me to pay for their Medicaid, that, then where do we go as voters? It's interesting. The Democrats right now, they're having this discussion about where do normal Democrats go anymore, because increasingly the crazies are taking over. And, you may know normal Democrats that grew up Democrats, but, they're not for all this insanity. And it's like, they're not Republicans, so where do they go? What do they do? And increasingly, fiscally responsible conservatives are finding themselves in this same position. Where do we go? Well, what do we just keep voting for Republicans because they're like, well, we'll screw you less? It's nothing personal against Josh Hawley. He's doing what works for him. And like I said, he doesn't have to worry about losing he's going to win every primary he wants to and win every general election that he wants to, as long as the makeup of the state stays the way that it is. And I think this is largely part of the reason that he operates the way that he does. But it's just, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And I think we have to be realistic about what we as voters decide to put in place and what they do and what they push for and whose side that they really come down on when it comes to these things that really truly matter about the direction of the country. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 87. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 68. For your Thursday, partly sunny with a high near 88. And looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 87.
Final thought on this discussion about Josh Hawley's New York Times piece and the problems that we have in this country. Somebody who is a healthcare worker texting in saying that, we have a huge influx of Russian and Ukrainian immigrants in our country, and they're in the U.S. less than 2 weeks. They're all covered Medicaid. I just, it's like hand it out as fast as it can, get as many people on it as possible. And then view it as a success. Look how many people we cover. Pat us on the back. That is not success. That is failure. Coming up, some of the latest revelations and from people like Jake Tapper. These people are such trash that were part of this Biden cover-up and now are acting as if they are all of a sudden revealing information that we're all learning for the first time because of people like him, and that is that, he had some real cognitive issues. I mean, that being said, it is somewhat interesting to find out to what levels they went to delude themselves and to lie to themselves, and what lengths they went to try to cover things up, including the recognition by Biden's own doctor that if he fell one more time, he was probably going to break his back to the point that he'd be in a wheelchair. Which is really odd because I remember talking about his doctor releasing a letter saying that he is just as fit as a fiddle. I want a great homeloan.com for all of your home loan needs. These are the folks for you, the characters in their team. Not just the moment you decide that you need that refinancing or that reverse mortgage or that home loan, first time, 50th time, investment time, whatever it's for, but in the lead up to it, is it the right time for you? Or, you know what, just even questions. Let's say I owe $10,000 left on my home. And I got, $400,000 in my 401k. Should I just take some out of that and go ahead and pay it off? Those are questions that, obviously aren't necessarily connected directly to you getting a home loan, but they make themselves available to advise you on those things, and information is of no cost. So take advantage of that community service they provide. And of course, then when it does come to your home loan needs, I want a great homeloan.com, because you do. It's clear the media, the left, they live in this total bubble. They have no self-awareness regarding the perception that normal people have about them. Because the fact that they can go out there and sit there and talk about how the Biden White House covered up his cognitive, they may have tried to, but here's the thing, they didn't. They keep talking about the cover-up. The cover-up, the Biden White House, the White House was covering it up. No, they weren't. They may have been trying to, but you know how it wasn't covered up? Because people who were looking could tell. We could see it. It was not covered. It's like trying to cover up, it's this massive facility with a napkin. Like, you can try all you want, but I still see it there. Yeah, it's not working. It's like a small child playing peekaboo. You can't see me. Yes, we see you. But the media, they're in their bubble, and this world of make believe, and it continued. So you've got some of these depraved journalists that were part of the cover up that are now trying to make a buck off of pretending like they were just as fooled as the rest of us, even though the rest of us weren't fooled. I mean, that's the thing. We weren't fooled. You're telling us things we already knew. Now, the behind the scenes stuff is interesting. I will admit that. But the problem is they are presenting it in the context of, well, we just had no idea. This is how they were so successful at making sure none of us knew. Do we have the audio ready here? All right, so here is audio. This is Jake Tapper talking about some of the additional information that he and his investigative reporting found out about the cover-up of Joe Biden's cognitive decline.
You have an entire White House press corps, though, following him around. And I'm just curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Like, why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were dealing with trying to get information?
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten. And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election of 2024, and we spoke with more than 200 people, most of whom, almost all of whom, were Democrats. And almost all of whom wouldn't be honest with us or wouldn't be candid with us until after the election. And then after the election, we found out all of these things that when you looked at what was going on with President Biden at the time, it probably doesn't surprise you the extent to which he was deteriorating. But now we have anecdotes and facts about what was really going on behind the scenes with details that Democrats wouldn't share with us until after Election Day.
Can you believe these people? It's as if we're watching some sort of performance, like this illusion performance, but we're able to see behind the scenes, right? It's some sort of magic show, and for whatever reason, we're able to observe how they do the tricks, and then afterwards, you have people come out and they're like, "Okay, everyone, now we're going to explain how this. We just learned that actually this wasn't magic, but we've learned through interviews with these people how this was done, and we're like, no, actually we saw it all. We were able to see it. Now listen, we're going to tell you here how it was they tricked you. No, they did not trick us. We were not tricked. We know how this happened. That's what this is like. You wish you could get these people in a room and be like, do you understand your role in this and like the way that you're perceived in all of this? These people are so, is icky a weird word to use to describe? It's just so gross and icky.
I think for me, it just gets on my nerves that they're going to a publisher's office, getting ready to release this book and release this information when they should have told this to the American public for free. That is their job.
Yeah, and part of the reason that they justify that or claim that they were lied to or tricked is because they would get official statements, and they've done this for a long while. Republicans claim without evidence that Biden this and that, and they're like, no, it's not true. Okay.
That's fine.
That's okay. Fact check. Donald Trump is lying. Joe Biden is fit as a fiddle because his staff says so. That's how they would operate. And, of course, circulating is audio of Jake Tapper himself. There's one, it was back in it was early on. I think it was when Biden was, maybe it was first elected. It was years ago. And Jake Tapper was interviewing Lara Trump. And Lara Trump was talking about how there were cognitive decline issues. And Jake Tapper is just, he's so dismissive and just smug. Like, you can't, and then starts accusing her of being mean to him because he has a stutter. And there are a number of different instances in which, rightfully so, that he himself was part of this cover-up. And it isn't like the people who were calling this stuff out had inside information. This was just this is what's crazy about it. We were all watching this happen. Apparently, we're going to take a break, and there new excerpts have come out on this stuff. I love how some of this information is coming out while Trump is literally changing the world for the better over in the Middle East. And then we're learning about Donald Trump, that apparently his doctor, Biden's doctor, was so concerned about his health, he was literally afraid that his staff might kill him because he was so fragile. He might kill him. This is where you get clicked back into reality about how bad these people are as human beings. That this person who his doctor really literally apparently was concerned that using Biden in the way that the White House was and the Democrats was putting his life in danger, and they didn't care at all. Did not matter. Biden was nothing other than a plug in the power hole for them. And that was it. He could die. He could be incoherent. He could literally be crapping his pants and have to clean himself up. Made no difference to them. These people are inhumane. And I don't think we should forget that. More from the book, including Steven Spielberg, part of the conspiracy. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. I broke yesterday, and I turned my AC on. And if you did the same thing, but instead of getting that sweet relief of nice, cool air, you got a funky smell, or maybe even worse, nothing, I want to recommend Russell and his team over at Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. The next couple of days are going to be really, really warm, so if you need to schedule an AC tune-up or your annual service repairs, now is the time time to do it. The Foreman team, they're quick, affordable, and they don't try to pressure you into buying a new unit. They're great folks. I've used them many, many times, and when it's time for me to finally upgrade my HVAC, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air, they are going to be my go-to guys. So if it is time to have Russell out to your home, give him a call today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
We've got traffic, and then 90 seconds after that, Steven Spielberg's part of the conspiracy we learned in this new book to help cover up Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Here is that traffic. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 87. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 68. For your Thursday, partly sunny with a high near 88. And looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 87.
Okay, we'll get to the Steven Spielberg part of these new revelations regarding the vast, you want to talk about a vast conspiracy to cover up and it wasn't a cover up, we keep calling it an attempt to cover up Biden's cognitive decline. From Axios, they note that, quote, Biden's physical deterioration, according to the books, most apparent in his halting walk, had become so severe that there were internal discussions about putting him in a wheelchair, but they couldn't do so until after the election. Now think about this for a moment. They weren't talking about putting him in a wheelchair just for comfort or because, why not? It'd just be easier for him. It was because he really, truly, desperately needed to be in a wheelchair. It was bad for him physically. Do you know how many people, and we talked about this during the election, do you know how many people his age, where the beginning of the real decline to death begins because of a fall? Many of you know this. Many of you have had your own family members, that was the beginning of the end, that there is a fall that occurs and that the quality of life because of the fall greatly diminishes because of their inability to go about life and just even do, just go for a walk, or just psychologically and emotionally, that's hugely impacting
when you are not able to do those things, and then you start thinking you may never be able to do those things again. And so it really causes people to shut down. And so many people his age, that it is that one moment of breaking the hip or breaking the leg or whatever that is looked back on, and that was the beginning of the end. That's where Joe Biden was, and they didn't care. Like, well, we can't take care of him because we may not win the election. Keep him walking. The authors reported that given Biden's age, his physician, Kevin O'Connor, privately said that if Biden had a bad fall, that a wheelchair might be necessary for what could be a difficult recovery. The book also revealed, despite O'Connor's pronouncements regarding Biden's physical condition, and this is another thing I remember during the campaign, saying, who is this doctor? Is there no Hippocratic oath here? It was so clear that Biden had problems, and they were saying that, no, his doctor says he's perfectly fine. And at the time, I recalled, all right, are they lying or is the doctor? Because although I'm not a doctor, there are certain things that are clear. So despite his doctor during the campaign saying, oh, yeah, no, he's perfectly fine. His pronouncement regarding Biden's physical condition, particularly one injury to the White House occupant that required a walking boot, he was long alarmed at how the presidency was worsening Biden's health. This is his doctor. So he had grave concern about this. O'Connor even worried that the then White House occupant's handlers might even kill him, not purposefully, but accidentally, because he was so frail. The doctor often argued with Biden's political officials to get more rest time into the president's schedule. You think about how much Biden already had. O'Connor sometimes quipped that Biden's staff members were trying to kill him while he was trying to keep him alive. Now, the problem I again have with this doctor, if this is true, is why is it then that when they were out there claiming this doctor said, no, he's fit as a fiddle, he's great as can be, right as the rain, well, did the doctor, and if not, did the doctor not have a responsibility for that is actually sort of I suppose, a tricky situation, because on one hand, you're like, well, doctor-patient privilege, but on the other hand, if people are lying about his health and lying about what you've said, for the sole purpose of putting his health and life in danger as a doctor, is it your responsibility to correct that record for the health of your patient? Not the sort of situation that probably most doctors have to deal with. So I can understand if that doctor is like, I don't really know what to do here. One Biden spokesperson anonymously released a statement to Axios in response to the new information, essentially saying there was nothing amiss about Biden's physical health, while insisting Americans should reject the evidence of their eyes and ears. Saying that there were physical changes as he got older, but evidence of aging is not evidence of mental incapacity. So, of course, some still holding on to the delusion. Now, Steven Spielberg's playing all of this. Spielberg was recruited in order to use, quote, Hollywood magic to trick people into thinking Biden was looking, cognitive and as if he were just as fit as we were told before or during appearances before the campaign, including his primetime State of the Union address and presidential debate. This, according to a New Yorker report by CNN's Jake Tapper and Axios' Alex Thompson. This is the latest news detailing efforts by Democrats who are frantic to conceal Biden's mental decline. In their book, Tapper and Thompson said Steven Spielberg tinkered with lighting and microphones, as well as crafted campaign video for Biden to help offset communication struggles caused by mental decline suspected by the public for years. Hollywood mogul Jeffrey Katzenberg, a mega Democrat donor and longtime Biden ally, reportedly recruited Spielberg to make Biden look as if he was better than he actually was. Quote, his 2024 approach, Katzenberg saw Biden's communication struggle and thought he could help fix that. He worked on providing better lighting for Biden, trying to find a microphone that would amplify Biden when he would break into a whisper for emphasis. Katzenberg also recruited his friend Steven Spielberg, who helped coach Biden for the State of the Union and his debates, even assisting with routine campaign videos. There was, however, only so much that Hollywood magic could do. That, again, an excerpt from the New Yorker article. Now, I got to tell you, not that I had an opinion one way or another about Steven Spielberg, but this makes me think that he's kind of a piece of crap too. We're not talking about Hollywood people being called in. For example, I think it was Spielberg that helped Al Gore when Al Gore was running against Bush. If it wasn't Spielberg, it was some Hollywood people. But they were doing that because Al Gore was very stiff and wooden, and, Bush, for all of his goofiness, he was, more personable and loose. And, I mean, Al Gore just was this wooden figure, and he exerted no personality whatsoever. And so they brought in, again, if it wasn't Spielberg, someone else, in order to try and help him learn to project in a more charismatic way. That's one thing. This was about taking someone that they knew should not be doing what he was doing, was not in a state of health, physically or mentally, and trying to cover up for it in order to push him through it. This is elder abuse again, not to mention the implications of conspiring in order to trick the American people to sway the outcome of an election, to alter, to change the outcome of an election in a way when we're talking about this is going into the second term, or what would have been the second term. And all of the things going on in the world, the potential implications in terms of potential wars or just the instability of having Joe Biden as president again, and you have Steven Spielberg as part of this conspiracy to try to make that happen. And, I don't buy this. He doesn't know. He didn't know. Every one of these people, well, he's the one guy who just didn't know. They knew. That's the whole point he was, brought in. All right, traffic update then. Podcast America host and his wife calling Biden a, quote, complete disaster. This is a former speechwriter for former President Obama. What did you do?
I got coffee in my eye.
How do you get coffee in your eye?
Because it's splashed.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, I'm a hot mess.
I like this analogy that was texted in. Brett texted in. Jake Tapper acts like he bought a ticket to a concert when he was actually a member of the band. That's so true. So many of these Democrats are that way. They're all the one Democrat that was out of the loop when it comes to Joe Biden. So we've learned also that Steven Spielberg was brought in order to try to trick Americans into thinking that Joe Biden was fine. In another incident mentioned in the piece, John Favreau, a former speechwriter for former President Obama, expressed shock at Biden's mental state during a visit to the White House in 2024 and at a campaign event at an LA theater last year. Favreau, now one of the hosts of the popular Democrat political podcast Pod Save America, and his wife Emily Black visited Biden in the White House in April of 2024. Favreau said Biden was incoherent and, quote, seemed to have aged 50 years in 16 months, as well as told meandering and confusing stories. Some of these quotes are they aren't funny, but they are funny. When Favreau pressed an aide about Biden's behavior, his concerns were dismissed. Quote, the president must have just been tired. It was nighttime at the end of a long week, the staffer said, according to the article. Excuse me. A few months later, Favreau and Black went to see Biden's campaign appearance at the Peacock Theater in L.A. Once again, they deemed the June event a, quote, complete disaster, while Black saying he, quote, couldn't believe how awful Biden seemed. Quote, I want to make everyone stay in this theater and say no one is going anywhere until we have a plan because this can't be it, Black, a communication consultant, reportedly said. Even the Senate top Democrat was deeply concerned about Biden, according to Tapper and Thompson. And we're going to play audio. We'll play this audio here of Chuck Schumer in a moment because he's been asked to some degree about this. In June, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer reportedly said, quote, if things go south at the debate, he and Obama and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, quote, have a plan B. Quote, sometimes the president would call Schumer. This is another one of those I laughed when I read it, but it's sad. Sometimes the president would call Chuck Schumer and after some chit-chat admit he forgot why he called. Sometimes he just rambled. Sometimes he forgot names. Tapper and Thompson said, Biden talked sluggishly. His voice was not just slower, but oddly quieter, reminding Schumer of his mother who had Parkinson's. Schumer was concerned about the president's electability. He talked about it with his staff, but he felt that he had to keep a close circle. If he talked about his worries with Obama or Hakeem Jeffries or Nancy Pelosi and it got out that they were discussing whether Biden was too old to run, that would make it even harder for him to win, they continue. These days, Chuck Schumer has gone mute. Now, that being said, so he was asked specifically about a particular instance, and this is on CNN or MSNBC. I think MSNBC. And he's there for an interview about other things. But at the end of the interview, she's asking him about the fact that he, was all this time that we now know he knew something was wrong, but he's out there lying to the American people about it. And she's talking about one particular instance in the Oval Office, and this is something that this is when Mike Johnson said he first knew Joe Biden something was wrong because Joe Biden denied signing an executive order that he signed. Now, of course, we don't know. Maybe he never did sign it or he just forgot. But Chuck Schumer was at that meeting, and there is video of Schumer and Pelosi and Biden, and they're all there, and it's in that context that this question is asked of Chuck Schumer.
CNN, our Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson have written a book called Original Sin, and they call it a cover-up of Biden's health and his cognition and his fitness, quite frankly, to be president of the United States. You sat next to Biden in the Oval Office, February 27th, 2024, just a handful of months before the president took that debate stage. And it was later reported that you and other Democratic leaders were talking before the debate about having a plan. You and Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama. I understand you later denied that that ever happened. But I am curious, I'm interested to know whether the man that you saw sitting there on that couch on that day, you were in there, you saw him up close and personal. Did you really not have any idea that he was not fit to serve a second term?
Casey, we're looking forward. We have the largest Medicaid cut in front of us. We have the whole
Right, but
federal
you're
government
facing all
at
of this
risk.
because you lost a presidential election. And is that not Joe Biden's responsibility for deciding to run again?
We're looking forward.
That's it?
That's it.
I think that last comment of his, that almost smug, yep, that's it. That's all you're getting from me, is what that it's this level of contempt. Like, how dare you ask me? We all, and part of this is from this perspective, I think, where some of these Democrats, like Chuck Schumer, he knows that they knew. They were, this was all something that they all knew. Now, they may not have all talked about it to one another, but it's like if you have a family member that everyone recognizes is in decline. Everyone recognize, you get a call at the supermarket because they're there in a robe with no underwear and you got to go pick them up. Everyone knows it, but nobody really talks about it. And then all of a sudden, when things come to a head, there's one or two family members that the rest of them are like, well, why didn't you tell us? And you're like, are you serious? What do you mean, why didn't I tell you? Oh, you're going to tell me you didn't know. We all knew. And I think that you can hear that, what's the word I'm looking for, that Chuck Schumer, he's just indignant. That indignancy when she's like, that's all you have to say. He's like, yep. And what he's really saying is, well, what else do you want me to say? You knew as well. Everyone knew. The only people who were admitting it were people that were on the other side of the aisle, and people on Fox News, and people on townhall.com, and people on SRN, and people on, all of the crazy right-wing networks that were all out there claiming you can't believe because they're putting out deep fakes about Joe Biden. Yes, they're the only ones who were talking about it, but we all knew. And so you can imagine Chuck Schumer, I'd be ticked off if all of a sudden these people that I knew about it as well, and they're grilling me and trying to make me look like a liar and an idiot. Like, what do you tell? Oh, that's it? That's all? You're just going to, say let's move forward? I'd be like, yep, that's it. What else do you want? Traffic update. After the debate debacle, there was this hint of anger from the media that they had been misled. And I think even some Democrat donors and Democrats in general. And of course, we all call it out as total BS because they knew. I think that being said, they were lied to in one way, and it was this. I think that they were told, yes, but we have it under control. They all knew that there were problems there, but I believe that the donors, the Democrats, the those that weren't necessarily closest to him, but that were running for reelection, the Democrats and the media, obviously they all knew and they saw what we all saw. But when it really came to those private conversations, I believe they were told, but don't worry, we have it handled. Yeah, he's got good days and bad days, but we know we've got it controlled. We're controlling him. We are controlling the time that we scheduled things. And you had a lot of these Democrats in the media and elsewhere that allowed themselves to be lulled into that false sense of security. And they believed that. They believed that while they knew Biden had these cognitive declines and was not fit to be president, that he was being handled well enough that the average American wouldn't realize it and it would not be exposed before the election. And when it became clear that they didn't have it under control, I think that's where they got mad. And that's where they felt this sense of we were lied to. So they were never lied to or about, oh, he's perfectly fine in a way that they believed. It was just they were convinced that we can still win this thing because we can pull this off. And they were quite upset when they learned otherwise. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Got a couple junior suites on the Great Escape that are available to you. Yes, you. We're going to be heading to the beautiful white sandy beaches of Cancun coming up November 9th through the 15th. It will be our Great Escape broadcasting live, and you can join us, be part of the show if you want, or just part of the trip. It is an incredible time, and you right now, you may be the person. It's usually, I find, not always, but usually it's a husband that says, you know what? And it's first timers. I was driving and I heard you talking about it. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to call. I'm going to reserve slot. And then I just went home and I told my wife. And never has the end of that story been, and boy, was she mad, and then divorced me and took everything I had, including the Sea-Doo. Nope, that's never how it ends. It's always the stories being shared while we're sitting there on the beach having drinks brought to us. Just under $2,000 a person for Garden View Junior Suites. And when if you've been on a cruise before and you think, well, I know what rooms are like on cruise ships, I'm guessing that it's similar. It is not similar at all to that. That it is nowhere within the realm of the same. It's a much different situation. And the all-inclusive nature of this particular resort, which was open in 2022, so it's newer. It's a Riu Palace line. Not only do you get room service covered whenever you want, and that mini bar covered and restocked anytime you want, but a liquor cabinet as well in your room. That is something that is part of this resort line. And again, all that's covered, including the airfare and the taxes and the tipping and trade. It's just an incredible time. KSGF.com. You can go there when you see the Great Escape tile deal ad, click on it, and that will give you the contact information for Cam, C-A-M, Cam. She is the one that you want to talk with to get yourself all set up. Final payment's not due till July, so you got time in order to do that, but you do want to get your deposit down as there are a limited number of seats on the flight because we all fly together there. It's a fun time. Want to talk a little bit coming up here about some of the incredible developments in the Middle East. And once again, Donald Trump is doing what, it's just like we all have these vision goggles on that limit our scope of sight, and he never has them on. And so he's like, going to the Middle East, going to make some things happen, and we kind of have in our minds what that means. And then he starts making these announcements, and you're like, oh, I never thought of that. What does that look like? That's kind of outside the box, because there is no box with him, which is part of the reason for his success. So we'll talk a little bit about that as part of the third hour of the show. Do want to remind you, the first hour we were talking about Medicaid and how it has increasingly, since Obamacare in particular, become such a massive drain, and how it has become something that you and I as taxpayers are forced to pay for able-bodied people who don't want to even work, who refuse to work, to cover them. And because of that, increasingly, people who really need Medicaid find themselves oftentimes not able to get it. And if you've ever been in this situation, particularly you're older and it's either Medicare or Medicaid, and you are in a position where you need to go to assisted living, or a family member does, and then you're told, well, you have too many assets, so you don't qualify. Ozarks Elder Law, they understand how all these systems work. And they are there to make sure if there is a way that this system that you have spent your entire life paying into, if there is any way whatsoever that it is possible for you to get some of that back instead of selling off your home, selling off your farm in order to pay for that stuff, they will make sure to do it. Too many people sell off the family farm, sell off the home, sell off assets because they're told, well, you don't qualify because you have too much money. And so the system you've paid into is not available to you. And it doesn't have to be that way. Ozarks Elder Law, get with them, consultation. They've got locations all over the area. And they don't nickel and dime you. It's not an hourly thing. They will tell you up front once you know what it is that you need to have done. Here's what it's going to cost. So you aren't, worried about billing hours or billable hours. That's not how they work. OzarksElderLaw.com. Also KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 87. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 68. For your Thursday, partly sunny with a high near 88. And looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 87.
You know, Kit Bond was 33 when he became governor.
Oh, really?
33. Youngest governor in the state of Missouri. I don't know how that falls with other states. I would imagine there's probably been some that were around there, but that's pretty. You think about the things you know that. Well, a lot of people thinking about what they were doing at 33. Think about being the governor of a state at 33. I mean, even if you are at 30, you look at being 33 years old and you're relatively successful, still running an entire state. It's a pretty crazy thing to think about. But you can be 35 and run the country. So I guess there's that. Traffic update. I'm Nick Reed. I got a shout out in a review.
Oh, did you?
Boom. 5 days ago. Well, I took a snapshot of it 5 days ago or a few days ago. It was 5 days at the time. James said, don't usually do these, but the experience working with Pinnaker Honda and my salesman, Ben, was amazing. I listened to Nick Reed in the morning. He said they were a great place, told the story about his experience, and I kind of blew it off as paid advertising. But when the salesman asked where I heard about them, and I told them Nick, he told the story when Nick was there, and it matched. I really didn't expect much from salesmen, but Ben was awesome. Never tried to overtalk or fast talk my wife or I, and was patient with us and worked diligently to help us get into a car that fit our needs and budget. Didn't start off acting like he would and then pull a bait and switch like I've experienced before. We thank you so much, Ben and Pinnaker, for the amazing customer service and experience. And thanks, Nick Reed, for the recommendation. Well, you're welcome. Did my part. But thank you, in all honesty, for also posting that review, because it is hard to find good, authentic reviews oftentimes. People are incentivized. They are, sort of pushed or compelled, and then they'll just do, oh, great service. And, these detailed reviews are always extremely helpful. So a big thank you to James there. And yeah, I mean, it was my experience. That's why I tell folks about it. So whether it's mine was in the Pinniger family, the Republic location, and of course do a lot of focusing because of its newer, particularly that new showroom floor that they've got there in Service Center, the Pinniger Honda location on South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. Any of those Pinniger locations are going to be great for you. Donald Trump this term is demonstrating more than any other, I believe, the vast difference in the level of respect that the United States is getting versus what it has gotten during previous administrations, and not just Biden. I recall, as many of you may, when Obama went over and bowed. I think it was before the Saudi Arabians bowed. The President of the United States, he went on that apology tour. He went around the world apologizing for all the horrible things we've done. You listen to that versus Donald Trump, and he's over there talking about how awesome we are. Literally half of what he's saying. He's talking about how awesome the United States is. We're the greatest country. He even jokes. He's so comfortable, and he is so liked by an audience. And he's got this audience filled with not just leaders of these Middle Eastern countries, but also leaders of different industries. And he's up there, he's just going on and on about and listing the reasons that America is the best country in the world, but he's in Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince is there. So then he sort of stops himself and he jokes about how, well, I mean, you actually are, or he said, I mean, obviously Saudi Arabia, you guys are the best, right? And I can't say that I am, jokes, and everybody's laughing, everyone's having a great time, everyone feels this camaraderie. It's also, you know what it is? It's authentic. And some of it is so stark because everything in the previous administration was so fake. So fake. Not just the words, but the present, everything. I mean, the cognitive state of our president was faked. His physical abilities were faked. Our significance in that region of the world, our influence, perhaps, is a more appropriate term, in that part of the world was fake. Fake. All of it's fake. Everything, it was all for just show. All right, U.S. is coming over. And you could see it. No enthusiasm, no interest in what the United States had to say. And then you see what has occurred, and the way that the United States, the level of respect that was put on full display, and it wasn't just respect like, well, we owe him a little respect. It was a clear desire to show us that there was respect. And instead of doing it because they wanted something, Trump gets them to sign checks. So he's going over there. He arrives. They roll out the purple carpet, which is the color of royalty. I mean, it's purple is everywhere for the guy. They have this massive sort of motorcade parade deal with these white Arabian horses. You have people within the Saudi Arabian government. I don't know if they're military or what. And they're on one arm they have the Saudi Arabian flag, on the other the U.S. flag. You think about just even the difference, if you want to look, the difference between the two political parties in our own country. When the dictator for communist China comes to the United States, Democrats don't even fly the American flag. Remember when Gavin Newsom ran to clean up the streets to make it look as nice as possible for the dictator from China, and then all the citizens are given communist Chinese flags, the flag of slavery and concentration camps, to wave proudly? The level of respect
that has been earned because of the way that Donald Trump has conducted himself as president. You go from these two different worlds where Democrats, as American elected officials, wave communist flags, but Trump goes over to the Middle East and you have the Saudi Arabians waving American flags. It is such a so profoundly different. And this is what is noteworthy about it. It isn't the behavior of the two presidents that is, yes, that is profoundly different, but it is the impact and effect that has on the audience in the world. This massive stage, they welcome Trump and they play. It's not, some sort of tribute to the Saudi prince in order to make sure everyone knows, hey, we're still the big guy here. Yes, Trump is getting a lot of attention, but don't forget we're in charge. They play Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA, and not just when Trump comes up and then fade it out. They play the whole song, and everyone stands in respect until it's over. It is the reception that the United States of America received is amazingly so much, even it shows a greater reverence than here in the United States, in some pockets of the United States will give. Of course, you got your blue cities and everything. I would encourage you to watch some of this stuff. And what's great about it is Trump is just straight up. He's like, let's get to business. Tells Saudi Arabia, hey, listen, Abraham Peace Accords, in your time, really would be great for you guys to start recognizing Israel here. Oh, you're not supposed to say that. You can't put them on the spot publicly like that. Trump does it. Also makes it very clear, Iran, you can have a piece of all this. Everybody's getting along. Everyone is getting along because they're recognizing that their lives are going to be better, that the stability of their nations, that for their people, going to be better, that there is a better way. Trump, I kid you not, without question is coming closer to, but is making it plausible that a culture that has been pervasive for thousands of years may change. That people and countries that have spent centuries destroying one another, all the way up through modern history. And I'm not talking about simply the relationship between Muslims and Jews. That's what gets all the attention. But all these different Muslim nations, have been over the years fighting, killing each other, slaughtering each other, the different factions within the Muslim religion or within Islam. That culture could change. And the reason, and this is the brilliance of Trump, and it's consistent. See, he figured out what works. You look at what it is that you got all these different entities, these different people, and ultimately, like, what do they want? What drives and motivates them? Well, just better stuff, right? Ultimately. And he has this vision in which the Middle East could be a place that is essentially like Europe, has been known in the modern era, where people want to go visit, that it isn't defined by extremism. It isn't defined by suicide bombings, but instead being a mecca for technology, being a mecca for entertainment. And he realizes that most people who aren't psychotic, and a lot of these leaders of these countries, they aren't necessarily psychotic, that if they see that and he can make them see the vision about how much better things will be. They don't have to worry about assassination. They don't have to worry about this. They don't have to worry about that all of the wonders and benefits of these things can be theirs. And he makes them see that. That's what he did with the Abraham Accords. Started to demonstrate to a number of countries that would never in a million years sign unilateral agreements with Israel, and made them see, hey, no, actually, this is what it can look like. And they go, actually, that is kind of good. It's the art of the deal. And this is what he is looking to expand and do. This is what all these deals are about. Because, see, the thing about these deals, and a lot of what occurs with the Abraham Accords, is helping facilitate deals in which these countries that normally hate each other or fight, because there's no benefit to being friends, he creates the benefit. It's like, you guys have this and they have that. You know what you guys could do if you got some of that and you got some of that? And all you got to do is, work out this deal. I do it all the time. I can help you. And what he does is he creates an environment in which they have much more to gain by getting along than they do by not getting along. You see, the peace approach has always been in the past between, and this is Republican and Democrat administrations, that you guys should all sign these little peace deals or get along because the upside is all these bad things will stop happening. But there was never, but do you know what else could happen? Like, we're not talking about the bad stuff just stopping. Like, if you guys quit fighting, then there'll be no more fighting. Isn't that wonderful? Trump says, no, there can be a whole magic land here. We're not talking about the fighting just stops. We're not talking about, hey, you still have the same quality of life, but without the fighting. We're talking about turning these places into wonderlands. We're talking about, instead of having, populations that are impoverished and live in what would be seen as almost third world conditions in certain areas of the world, that it could be a wonderland. That is a possible thing. And here's a way it can happen. Trump just knows if you give people an opportunity for and show them in a way that they recognize it's realistic, that you can actually have a much better life, most people will take that. And that's what's going on right now over there. And this also includes, and it's controversial already, which I knew it would be, and it's understandable. He's like, you know what we're going to do? We are going to give Syria a chance. Syria has a new leader, and this new leader has not been given a chance for peace yet in terms of joining the rest of us. We're starting this really awesome thing over here, and yeah, you guys have a messed up thing going, and you're kind of a mess. You've got, this is not a wonderful guy by any means, but now he's leader of the country. And instead of saying, nope, guess what, dismiss you, you're going to be a problem for the rest of the future, and you're going to be a thorn in the side of everyone, he said, we're going to give you a chance. Now, if you don't accept it, then you're going to be choosing your own fate, but we're going to give you this opportunity. Why? Because Trump recognizes that that is the only way that you possibly have a positive outcome in which you turn a country like Syria into a better country. Well, he's naive because that'll never happen. He's not naive. He knows that is going, but that's got to be a choice of theirs. And he also knows that he's crafting a landscape that just might be a desirable landscape for a new leader of Syria. To be like, we don't want to be left out of this. But if he chooses to take a pathway of low quality of life and not joining what could be this new found world in the Middle East, all right, that's his choice, but at least there was the chance. This is why Trump gets things done that others don't,
because they don't see that vision. Everything is in a box, and everything is conventional. And the weird thing about it, for as much as the left, they love to really portray themselves as these visionaries and humanitarians, and Trump is just some sort of, Wreck-It Ralph idiot that doesn't know what he's doing. Trump is the one that really, truly understands the unbridled possibilities of what human beings will do. Not just for bad, but for good. And he's the one that gives them the opportunity and lets them choose for themselves. And if there is in our era going to be true transformational change in that part of the world, it will be because of this. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. All right, I went a little long that segment, so we still have weather to come in a moment. Before we get there, last check on the traffic this morning.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 87. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 68. For your Thursday, partly sunny with a high near 88. And looking ahead to Friday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 87.
Pyramid Roofing Company talking text line. The monologue about the Middle East tends to minimize the hold the Islamic religion has on the people. I do believe that we actually oftentimes overestimate, because of stereotypes, the hold culturally as a whole that Islamic extremism might have in terms of how people function. Now, let me explain that. When we see, like in the news, for example, things that are occurring in the Middle East, they're usually bad things, right? That's why they're worth covering. That's why it's in the news, because they're bad things. And when it comes to people that are doing the bad things, or supportive of doing the bad things, those are generally people that are led by or utilize Islam as their reason. And so that's what we see, and I believe that it's perfectly natural that in our minds, that's what we think exists wholly and fully throughout all of the Middle East. Now, you are going to have some pockets where culturally it is that way more than others. And let's say even it is more, to a significant degree. Some of these, Iran in particular, you should just Google photos of Iran in the 70s. You would think it was Santa Barbara. Women in short shorts, T-shirts walking around. You would have no idea. And it was a Islamic country. But what, of course, occurred is some of the more extremists got in charge, and they pretty much demanded, all right, now we're going to be much more extreme when it comes to Islam. And it was because the leadership forced it upon the people. And that doesn't mean that there aren't people who buy into it, and that there aren't people who, that's what they are going to lead with. That region of the world, and there are pockets even today that are modernized. We just don't hear about them. We don't see about them. In fact, Brett Baer, he has been over there with Fox News in Riyadh, and he's doing his show from there. And at the end of each show, he takes a couple of minutes just to be like, oh, hey, since we're in Saudi Arabia, let's take a look at a few things. And one of the, I think maybe it was Monday, it was this area, and it looked like an entertainment mecca. Completely modern, completely clean. It looked like the sort of thing that if it were any city in U.S. of A., you'd say, we need to go there. And it was filled with American stuff, too. There were all these American different entertainment facilities, restaurants. If he had not said, this is Saudi Arabia, you would have thought it was some city in the United States of America. And he noted some of the, just how technologically advanced it was. He also noted this massive, and I forgot how many hundreds of different stores and stuff or whatever, but that I think he said it took 140 days to build or something. I mean, it's just like something that would take 10 years here in the United States took a few months there. And while that may just be, well, that's not what the whole of Saudi Arabia is. Well, yes, that's true. But that is a recognition that what we think of culturally goes on there completely is not necessarily what goes on there completely. By the way, it's not just us. People from other countries who have never been to the United States oftentimes find when they come here, it's not at all what they thought it was. Because they get that pinhole view through the media as to what the United States is.
Years ago, I was reading through. It was a local newspaper, not here, and every year they would do several pages on a Sunday where they talked with foreign exchange students at the local high school. And one of the questions they always asked was, what was your biggest misconception about the United States? And there were like 8 or 9 of them, and with the exception of one, every single one of the rest of them said they thought that Americans were going to be rude and arrogant and mean. And they all found that was not, they were shocked how nice Americans were. But they had this cultural view based off this tiny little pinhole that they would see through the media and through pop culture. And so, but, it's much different because they didn't have the ability to actually live in it, to be in it, to be seeped in it. And I think that oftentimes we look at other regions of the world like the Middle East and we think, well, there's no way that those people will ever agree to be this particular way because they're all this way, and because of the way that the coverage of different news stories come out of the Middle East, that we just have a false impression as to what the 100% of the culture is. Listen, I don't want to pretend as if obviously changing that culture is not easy. If it were, it would have been done a long, long time ago. I just believe that if it is at all possible, Donald Trump's approach is the one that will do it. And by the way, that means that, yes, dealing with people who have done bad things. We collaborated with Stalin in order to win World War II. Stalin was Hitler. I mean, this guy had death camps. This guy was brutal. I mean, it wasn't like we chose the nice one of the two. They were both equally as bad. Different ways, different motivations, both horrible people. But we collaborated with Stalin, the Soviet Union. Because at the time that was a relationship that we felt was one that was necessary in order to get to a positive outcome. And Trump's approach is that may, that same thing is going to come into play. If we are going to change the culture in the Middle East and get all of these players to start operating in a way that facilitates a culture of peace instead of a culture of factions and war, then that means we've got to win some people over, and we're winning them over from the bad guy side. I've seen, and I'm not saying that it's incorrect or inaccurate that, well, he's going to meet with this president of Syria. That guy's he's a terrorist who, there was a reward out for him at one point. He's going to be meeting with somebody that, this is the sort of person he's meeting with. Yeah, these are some of the people that are important in the Middle East. And I'm not even saying that a person is wrong for not liking that. But Trump's vision of it is, well, if we don't try it, if our view is going to be that we are not going to include anyone in this attempt to change things that has done bad things, then we're not going to have anyone. We'll be basically back to where we were before, like, hey, we're cool with Israel, but the rest of you, sorry. Now, the important thing is not being Pollyannish, and because you want it to happen, then, allowing these people to continue their bad ways while being rewarded for it. But I think if anyone has demonstrated that they don't fall into that trap, that's Donald Trump. To me, he's earned that. I just really feel I in the first term, well, prior to the Abraham Accords, thought like a lot of people, there will never, ever, ever be any meaningful steps towards actual peace between some of these Arab nations and Israel. And Trump proved me wrong. I also thought we would never actually be energy independent because my entire life, everyone who ever ran for president said they were going to do that. But Trump proved me wrong on that one as well, because he did do that. And so based off of that track record, I'm going to be hopeful and recognize that it is at least possible. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be people that try to sabotage it. And it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be people that we have to say, okay, you may not deserve forgiveness, but for the sake of potentially completely altering the landscape of the Middle East, you're going to get it in this instance. You got one shot at it. You get one, but that's it. You get one. Now, meanwhile, while all of this historic stuff is taking place in the Middle East, Chuck Schumer is going to hold up every Department of Justice nominee until we get answers on that airplane thing. Donald Trump is out there like a Jedi Knight crafting this potential historic change in the world, and Chuck Schumer is like, hey, what about that airplane thing? I go, okay, you keep doing what you're doing, Chucky. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company dealing with a storm damaged roof. That is a stressful situation, and it gets even more stressful when insurance comes into play. Now, Josh joined us last week, and he talked about some of the most common questions that they receive, many of which have to do with insurance, like, do I need to file a claim? Should I wait to file that claim? And another one that he mentioned was, now, will you guys pay my deductible? Which is something that not so great roofing companies used to push to try to win your business. But Josh, he explained that it's illegal, that's insurance fraud, and they're just attempting to scam you. But the one thing that the Pyramid Roofing Company team will offer for you, they'll offer a free roof inspection. They offer discounts also on new roof installs for our military and our first responders. And they also work through that insurance process with you without making you sign anything. So whether you do need a whole new roof or maybe just a simple roof repair, remember the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, you can find all of the contact information for Josh and his team under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
A House Democrat moving to force a chamber-wide vote on an impeachment resolution against Trump. Representative Shri Thanader of Michigan introduced his impeachment resolution as privileged. Yesterday afternoon, meeting leaders have 2 days of the House in session to take up the legislation. House GOP leaders could move to table the motion, a procedural vote aimed to scuttle a piece of legislation without having lawmakers vote on the legislation itself. Now, on one hand, listen, right now, there is a bit of a clock ticking when it comes to budget stuff. But outside of that, I let this happen. This isn't the first Democrat to introduce articles of impeachment this time around. And to me, if Mike Johnson had any smarts about him as leader, I would bring it up for a vote. Make Democrats vote on it. Make them vote on it. Because in case no one has figured this out, constantly going after Trump was not a winning strategy for Democrats. They impeached him. They arrested him, raided his home, mugshotted him, literally contemplated whether to put him in jail. I mean, just one after another. And the American people rejected it. This was not good for them. Now, there were a lot of other reasons that people voted for Donald Trump over, Democrats and Kamala Harris. But the attacks on Trump highlighted the fact for a lot of Americans that Democrats had they were offering nothing, no solutions. It was just attack Trump, attack Trump, attack Trump. This would be just a real good refresher course for people who might kind of forget. While Trump is out there making things happen, while the stock market is doing really, really well, while you have historic talks to take place tomorrow between Putin and Zelensky, if it happens, I mean, the fact that we've gotten this close is historic. You have all of this stuff going on in the Middle East. You have these, billions and tens of hundreds of billions of dollars that are, investments coming into the United States. You have a border that is just, you want to talk about a miraculous turnaround of fix. And Democrats are going to try to impeach him. Let them do it. Bring it up. Make a deal of it. Have them all vote on it. Let's see how many actually do decide to vote on it. For the life of me, again, I know that there is a lot that is being done right now in terms of budget and stuff, but to me, this is well worth a day or two. Set aside, and let's bring it up. Let's talk about it. Let's debate it, and let's have those Democrats vote on this. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. This Democrat member of Congress looking to move forward with impeachment against Donald Trump has said that Donald Trump has unlawfully conducted himself, bringing shame to the presidency and the people of the U.S. He's not talking about Biden. He's talking about Trump. He also took a swing at Doge, calling it flagrantly unconstitutionally created. Well, Obama's the one that actually created it. Yes, the name changed. Trump changed the name, but the entity itself was something that Obama created. In fact, he gave a little speech about it, about the reasons that we need to make government more efficient. Now, the difference between him and Trump is Trump actually did it. So if there's going to be an article of impeachment against Donald Trump because of the creation of this entity, then that impeachment needs to be of Obama. And you think, well, he's not president any longer. Hey, we learned from Democrats you can impeach someone who's not even president. Let's not forget that last round of impeachments for Donald Trump was when he wasn't even president any longer. They just up and decided, well, you can also impeach someone who used to be a president. So let's bring on the articles of impeachment for Obama. By the way, that Milwaukee County judge that tried to help that accused, he was in the country illegally, but he was on trial for beating up people, including a woman, and that judge tried to help him, conspired with him to evade ICE. Grand jury indicted that judge for helping the illegal alien invade ICE. Good. No one's above the law. Remember that sort of thing? That includes judges. You don't get to help people break the law. At least you shouldn't be able to. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I will talk with you tomorrow. I'm Nick Reed.